This is the Vaxee'S XE. First, let's go over the specs. The length is 122mm long. The height is about 38mm and the grip width is 61mm, with the back width being about 66mm. This is an ambidextrous shape, with many people comparing this mouse to the Logitech G Pro Superlight. And I'm going to tell you now, they're nowhere near identical in my opinion. Starting with the back of the mouse, what you'll notice with the Vaxee'S XE is that it gradually comes up. The midpoint is quite nice and smooth. Now in comparison, if we get the G Pro Superlight, well, this is a G Pro wireless, but exactly the same shape, so we'll use this as a comparison. You'll notice that the mouse comes up a bit more sharply, more towards a claw grip design, then protruding more around here. And then it will level out a bit more, keeping a slightly high button height in comparison to the Vaxee'S XE, which has very low button heights in comparison. The main similarities you can say that both of these mice have is the side. They're quite straight. So what you'll notice with the G Pro Superlight, if I get the camera close to it, is that there's not really much flare towards the middle, which means that it allows for wherever your hand can be placed on the mouse. Kind of similar with the Vaxee'S XE. So as you notice, there's actually less flare in comparison to the G Pro wireless / Superlight shape. But what you'll notice is that the back of the mouse is way more wider in comparison to the Superlight, which has a more reserved back, but it's more the gradual hump from the back of the mouse to the midpoint of the mouse, the peak of the mouse. Whereas here, the slope is actually a little bit more gradual, but due to the wide hump, you can actually create more contact points around your back end of the palm, right here. The main comparison I'd actually make with the Vaxee'S XE is the Zowie FK shape, or in this instance, the Model O, which is basically an exact clone of the FK1, and you can definitely see some similarities. So if we look at it from this angle, you'll notice that again, the hump, which is from the back of the mouse to the peak of the mouse, is a bit more gradual, but the peak of the mouse is a little bit lower. However, the flares are much more defined, so this has a much more narrow point in the middle, which makes it feel a little bit more precise in certain ways. But the problem that you have sometimes is that it can cause cramps, a little bit of ache for certain players, because you're contorting your fingers a little bit unnaturally. And this is one of the things that ergo shapes and something more aggressive claw grip shapes tend to remedy. For example, the G303 Shroud Edition. Your curvature of the finger is meant to protrude a little bit. It's more natural and it's actually a little bit more viable. The bit more bulkier sense allows that you're not getting your fingers to pincer in more in comparison to something like the FK style shape, actually allowing for a bit more comfort, which in turn allows for a bit more control. Now in practice, the Vaxee'S XE really does remind me of a Zowie FK1, but also it reminds me very heavily of like a SteelSeries Sensei shape. It's like an amalgamation of the two. And what it results in is that with the length being only 122mm compared to 127 or 129, usually in comparison to the Viper Ultimates or the FK, or 125/26 when it comes to the SteelSeries Sensei, you have a lot of wiggle room that allows for nice macro adjustments. And because the grip width isn't very thin, it, for my hand size, actually feels very comfortable and allows me to be able to precisely fit with such comfort and ease, while also being able to make micro adjustments again with such ease. Playing tactical shooters such as Rainbow Six Siege, CounterStrike and Valorant, I'm able to hold my crosshair placement very nicely and very effectively due to the comfort. I feel like I can flick very easily and I have full control with this mouse, which is something that in comparison to something like the Zowie ZA13C, I could get that, but it came at a cost of comfort issues. Whereas with the Vaxee'S XE, I never had that. I could play for very long sessions and I felt at my best. One example I can use is actually going into Kovacs, and when I was playing Kovacs with the Vaxee'S XE, I noticed straight away that my scores actually increased and I started setting new personal bests, or I was actually getting more consistent high scores in comparison to the other mice I was using. This in turn showcased that while many people would look at this mouse and say it's a bit bare bones and basic and may not conform to the grip style that they want, with my grip, which is very much a relaxed claw grip with this style of mouse. It just felt natural. I didn't have to worry about where I was going to flick on the screen. It just allowed me to just play the game, and I was able to achieve the scores that I wanted. Other features of this mouse is that it has a spare button below the scroll wheel. The button is page down, but can also be rebound to be the screenshot button or the emoji button. As for why they're there, I don't know, don't really care. But also, you know, page down is quite handy if you want to, you know, inspect your weapon or such. The DPI button is also at the very bottom of the mouse underneath the sensor, along with the polling rate and debounce buttons as well. Final things I want to actually talk about is the button feels as well as the build quality of the mouse. The buttons feel absolutely phenomenal, and for the build, this little bad boy is a tank. This is probably one of the most well-built mouse I've ever used. There are no other mice that I have had in my collection that I could go, wow, this wouldn't break on me at all. And I will say this for every Vaxee mouse that I've gotten a hold of, the MP01 and even the Outset AX, built to perfection, which is why they're not as light as the competition. But for a little bit of weight, even though this is 67 to 68 grams, this still feels like a tank. Overall, my time with the Vaxee has been phenomenal, and I'm pretty sure that I will use this as my main going forward, although I will want to test out the G303 Shroud Edition on another product to see which one will be my top spot, because going back and forth between these mice has always been very, very difficult for me to land on which one I would actually take with me wherever I go. For one is wireless and the other is wired, although the Vaxee does have a wireless version. It is slightly heavier, but they did say they are looking into trying creating a slightly lighter version. If they can get it at least to 74 to 72 grams, I think this could beat the G303 Shroud Edition for me. But we're talking between a wired and a wireless version, so I will definitely say for the majority of people, this is a mouse I would actually recommend. It's a nice shape, very, very traditional, conventional, nothing too crazy about it, but it feels comforting in the hand. It doesn't feel strenuous and can be adaptable to different grip styles. Not as adaptable as the G Pro Superlight, but that's a good thing, because you don't want a mouse that basically just becomes a shell, like an eggshell, where you can't really get a nice grip on it. So for me, it beats the G Pro Superlight. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like this video, and subscribe if you can. Take care, and goodbye.